And so I'm going to call this meeting to order at 2:30 p.m. on February 11th, 2019. So, has everybody had an opportunity to look at the minutes?
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing if we can. Where we had the request for qualifications for the engineers consultants. I feel
Yes.
sure Cindy has typed this exactly like we said it, but on that second page of that,
I don't get a second. Do you get a second?
Barely.
where it says where Bill and I wanted to interview the airport engineer consultant, discuss with them their payment and fee structures, we want to amend that to their procedures for payment and fee structures.
Did you get that? Mm-hmm. Are there any other corrections to the minutes as stated? I'd like a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Nay. The minutes are approved as amended. Vince, are you able to give an update on the East Side construction project?
Do you want me to try to call Joe?
Yes, please.
I can tell you, we have our taxiways tied in, so that's the most difficult part of that. Required shortening the runway for different periods of time, so that's done.
Hey, Joe.
And they're working on the
Have a signal. I've got you.
main drainage ditch that's going to go down the center,
Speaker now, okay.
north and south of our large ramp
Okay.
right now.
Okay, all right.
And I haven't been out there in
Cindy,
about a
make
week.
note at this time
but
that we've added
it's
Joe to
moving
the
along
meeting
pretty well.
to listen. Okay. Is that the extent of the update?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Number 3, Josh sent around the final draft of the notice of availability. Has everyone had an opportunity to read it?
Yes.
Does anyone have any comment or input or correction?
I think that what we are down to on that is the method that we want to advertise the increase in rent over the term of the lease. And I think everybody's in agreement that it will increase in 5-year periods, meaning at the end of each 5-year period, there will be an increase. The question is determining the methodology by which to increase the rent every 5 years. And the existing leases, ground leases that we have, use the methodology that the rent will increase by either 12.5% or the percentage increase in the consumer price index over that same time.
The greater of.
Correct, the greater of those two. There has been some discussion about moving towards the average increase in CPI over that period of time. And so those are sort of the two counterbalancing methodologies that have been discussed. Other than that issue, I think that the notice of availability is in a final form and ready to go, including the dates of advertisement and so forth. But we need to have some consensus by the board as to the methodology by which the rent will increase over the course of the lease term.
Well, when you say average, is that a 5-year average? So it's the, whatever it's moved every year divided by
That's
5? Well, that would be far less than 12.5%,
Yes,
wouldn't
it
it?
would. It would.
Well, then I'm pushing for the 12.5%.
Yeah, I think that'd be commercially a normal standard would just be to put it in there where there's predictability. You can go ahead and put the rate in there that at year 5 it goes up to this, and year 10 it goes to this, instead of having a zero CPI number that drags it back down to where you're talking about. You're going to end up there anyway, based on what I've seen in the CPI over the past 10 years anyway. So.
It's going to be 12.5 at a minimum, anyway.
Do you think that's
The way it's
adequate?
written right now, it would be 12, at a minimum 12.5% in each succeeding 5-year period.
A lot of, in cell tower leases and such as that, it's the number's about 3% a year. It's about 15%. And the 12.5%, I think, is a good compromise number. I don't think it's too much. I don't really think it's too little. If you wind up equaling the CPI or even the average of the CPI over 5 years, you've gained nothing. You essentially are not making any money. And I think as we decrease our supply and the demand is increased, we should, rents should go up. And just by adjusting by the CPI, we're not necessarily any better off 25 years from now than we are today.
Were you saying make it a flat 12.5 or?
I was just saying as we look at kind of our governing, and we have leases that are maturing at different times and having to do these calculations at different points in time for different pads, that it might just be better to just pick out a number and say that's when it is, rather than, one guy gets a CPI release, that comes out and you're able to include it in, and this other guy has his lease that's 3 months older, but he doesn't have to include, it's just, I would just almost say for predictability of revenue on our part, it might be better to just have a number and just say, if it's 12 or 13, it's just what it is.
Isn't that a pretty high number for 5 years? 12.5% would be pretty high. You'd only expect it to be, we're in a period of growth, it could probably only be lower, right?
That's, if I were to take my hat off outside of here, I don't see them higher than 10% every 5 years is kind of as much as I see on any commercial leases right now.
And see, that's why I like it. It's got that little bit of, it's a little bit of margin. It's not too much, but if it's 10 now and we get 12.5, then we're making a little bit more. But we're not gouging people over 5 years.
12.5, we don't have to sit down, we're a volunteer board. We don't have to sit down and recalculate when this one expires.
Or the new airport manager or whatever that we have.
And then it's also in the tenant's hand then to make the payment, just like what we ran into a little bit with the Department of Public Safety, where they were waiting on us to give them what the rent was, and then in that interim time, like everyone's just sitting on their hands, this is the duty's on them to make this payment.
Well, then, if you want to get that explicit, you could just say it's 27 cents now, and then and it's this in year 5, and it's this in year 10, and we could put the number in there. That takes any doubt out of it. And why wouldn't we just do that?
Yeah.
That's what I would think would be better for us. And that's the treasurer.
1,000 times easier than
Yeah.
trying to, like you said, keeping the effective dates of everything.
Well, if we're going to vote on that, then we need to make a decision right now to edit it. Are we planning on taking a vote?
Again, to my knowledge, that's the last sort of piece of information, if you will, to put it in a final format such that we can publish.
Somebody calculating that number real quick. I just say in year 5, the rent will go to this, in year 10, it'll go to this, 15 and 20.
As they're calculating, I had a couple of minor questions, Josh.
Certainly.
On number 7, submit the deposit refunded request following completion of hangar construction. I think we had a discussion about one time, any language indicating, you completed the construction, but do you have it signed up by the city for occupancy? Or,
Say that one more time, I'm sorry, I didn't quite, as far as what their obligations are after the completion of construction, or?
Well, they've completed the construction, but hasn't been signed off by the city as being complete and so forth.
I think that's what, so the triggering event of the language construction completed is the question. And I think that is issuance of a certificate of occupancy by the city
Yes.
building department.
Yes, so I'd like to see that in there, the issuance of that. And on item 16, you have the same sentence in 16 as you have in 15, that applicants shall use the form prescribed by the authority for applying for the ground lease. Do we need it in both paragraphs, since you said it in one?
No, I think I moved it around and just didn't delete it from the previous paragraph.
And then you have a duplicate address on the last page that's reprinting the P.O. box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You got it? Can I see that number? You wrote it in the paper? Did you write it down?
How many decimal places? There's various.
I'd probably go to 3.
Well, for purposes of the notice, we can include a percentage, but then include in the lease the actual numbers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll work.
That'll work. Okay, so then, given the edits that we have been agreeing to here, particularly on item 13, can we have a motion to approve the notice of availability with the specified edits that have been discussed here today?
Make a motion to approve the notice availability, subject to the recommended edits made here today.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. It's good to get that done. Okay, the Vince, if you please speak to the recommendation and approval of an airport engineering consultant for the Fairhope Airport.
Sure. Bill Pennington and I reviewed the 5 applications we had, and we narrowed that down to 3 last Wednesday, I think. Last Wednesday, we met with all 3 of these. We turned it into an all-day affair on the ones that we had, which were Volkert, Michael Baker, and Goodman Mills and Kaywood. And basically, our procedure was to find the most qualified candidate based on their experience, et cetera. Pricing is always subject to an after-the-fact discussion. There's actually a circular that tells you how to do that after the fact. So our decision be based solely on the qualification of the folks that we interviewed. I don't know if this is out of line or not. I wonder if 2 of y'all had asked if you'd have an opportunity to say something if you wanted to. I don't know if y'all want to. No, we're good. Okay. So that being done, Bill and I came up with a recommendation. Bill's not here today, but we came up with a recommendation that we would go with Volkert again and recommend we go with that 5-year renewal with Volkert. Nothing good, bad, or indifferent about any of that. All equally qualified, excellent qualifications, excellent airport qualifications. We learned something, Bill and I did, from each of the 3 that we interviewed. We could not see a reason to change just for the fact of changing, and because they're all so well qualified and right there together, and we're in the middle of an ongoing project. So our recommendation would be to stay with Volkert and renew a 5-year contract with them.
Shall we have a motion to approve Volkert, and then we'll open it for discussion?
I'll put that in form of a motion.
Will someone second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion.
I'll start. It's tough. It's tough, guys, ladies. It's 3 great candidates, and and thank you for that job that you did. That's not easy to make that recommendation, I'm sure.
It was not easy. We were quite impressed with all 3 in all the same areas.
I don't think that there's a one of them that's not capable. I mean, you recommend that, and I see GMC here, and it's just a great, outstanding company. I see Bobby has been over here, worked with the airport authority for years and years, and done a great job. So, I don't know, is there anything else you can just bring forth?
We couldn't find a difference between them, and I know y'all all different, but we could not find
You just,
a reason
other than
to
if it's
say,
not broke, don't fix it?
we need it, and it's not broke, don't fix it right now. Maybe down the road, I don't know, there might be a reason to go in a different direction if we're not in the middle of a project here, but that really didn't have anything to do with it, because there was no separation between the 3. They're all right there together. Great firms.
So even though we're in the midst of a current ongoing project, if we were to switch, you feel whoever we switched to could seamlessly pick up and carry forward?
I do. Now, there's an after the math situation. Once we make a decision today, whoever we go with, then we can negotiate some pricing. I don't think there's a lot of room for any of them, because a lot of their rates are established through the state. but there is some negotiation there. If we were to not feel like we were getting a fair shake in negotiations, something that we thought was maybe a little too high here or there, we have a right to change at any time, and they have an obligation to walk away because we disagreed on pricing. So, not saying, hey, we want to sit down and beat you to death next week, and so we can throw you out, and then we can go to him, beat him up, and then we're finally going to wind up with him at the best price. But that option's available if for some reason, and all these folks might be somewhere else 3 years from now. They'll most likely be where they are. But there might be somebody else that came in and said, we don't like the way you're handling this pricing. We could negotiate that at that time and change if necessary.
Yeah.
So it's a 5-year commitment, but it's based off their qualifications to date and then subject to price negotiation as we go along.
So the motion is to select them. So, and it's city council business, it's always, we make a motion, for we choose the consultant, and we authorize the chairman to negotiate the fee schedule, and then the fee schedule is brought back for final approval.
Right, and that fee schedule can be subject to each project that we do as we go forward. So we can negotiate that each time. And some of our original question was, and it was very adequately answered and addressed by, Volker and addressed by the other two indirectly, was let's go through, because Bill and I weren't 100% sure of this pricing structure and how it works and how it's set up and who audits what and where. And obviously we got the exact same answer from all three of them. They're all following that advisory circular to a T. The only variable is a minor amount of negotiation that can be done after the fact per project.
And I actually prepared 3 resolutions. They're all exactly the same. It's just that I didn't know which contractor or engineer the board would decide to go with. But what the resolution does, generally speaking, is it approves the engineer for a 5-year term and also authorizes a chairperson or vice chairperson to execute what I'll generally call a master contractor's agreement that doesn't have anything to do with the price of any particular project, but contains provisions that will govern those contracts or supplemental agreements that the board would approve as we go through the AIP process.
Ray, do you have any comments?
I mean, I would just defer to the process that we went through. I mean, I know that that's really where the decision has to be made. We do have an opportunity to change if it's not working out, but I think first and foremost, I think Volker's done a great job. I think, they have administered our funds in a great way, and we've got a lot of positive things happening, but people move around.
If you had asked Bill or myself, our first meeting we had 5, when we went to 3, we made up our minds independently and sat down and talked a little bit, and then finally one of us said, hey, well, here's the way I did it. And that's what the other one had done. And then when we sat down with these 3, I think we both had our own opinions when we got there, good, bad, and indifferent for each one of them for a certain situation. When we got through, it was like flipping a coin. So, y'all have some fabulous companies. There's no doubt about it.
I think.
Just seeing if he has any comment.
Any comment, Joe?
I just want to thank Vince and Bill for their effort. I know it was a tough decision, but I think you had 3 good candidates, and I've had a great relationship with Volker over the last 5 years, and I welcome the opportunity to work with him again.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further comments by anyone? Okay, then I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the motion to retain Volker as the engineer of record, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, congratulations, Volker.
Thank you.
And we will need right away to submit the documents that we need to submit by Friday, Josh?
We need to follow up on that. My understanding is that certain documents have already been submitted, but we need to have this master agreement in place and executed prior to that time.
Yeah, and I have that if you guys need it. I went ahead and prepared it just in the event that we were selected.
I also want to thank the other firms for applying.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. All right.
I really do appreciate it.
I hate being elected when these things come up like that.
I know,
It's no-
I
By
know.
the way, the young lady called Keith Pugh called me, and I said, I don't want to hear about her deer hunting anymore, so I have a picture of the 13.300-pound deer, if you want to see it when we get through.
Okay. Can anyone here speak about the presidential invitational fly-in, February 27th to March 4th? You, Joe?
Yes, ma'am. You want to come up here?
Yeah, please.
The formation clinic starts the 27th in the afternoon. I spoke with a commander this morning. He's part of the VT-10 over Pensacola, and they're planning on bringing in 3 of the T-45 Goshawk jets. We do honor the military fuel card. We do not have a military fuel contract yet, but I think this would be a good opportunity to expose, the public, because it's going to be a static display, these jets. We're supposed to have an A-4 Skyhawk coming in, a Russian Mi-24 gunship, which was here a month ago for training, should be back. T-33, MiG-15, MiG-17, and the L-29s, L-39s. So right now we have 35 jets scheduled to show up.
35 jets.
Yes, ma'am. And that's just the warbirds. And then we're going to have their corporate jets because they're bringing their families this time. So we're going to have, excuse me, Citation Sovereign, Citation 4 or Citation 3, a couple other corporate jets. So we're going to have, and I've already ordered a second Jet A truck to keep up with the fuel demand. The fuel, they've allocated extra trucks for us, so we won't have an issue with getting jet fuel, barring anything at the refinery. See, that's what we ran into last year. But
Please note that Will Bruce, authority member, has joined the meeting at 2:53 p.m.
I want to note for the record, after all the hard decisions that have been made, too.
We'll document
Good
that.
timing.
Will the public be able to come to the airport to see the planes static there?
yes, ma'am. We're planning on having at a minimum of 3 jets. So if the Navy brings their Goshawks in, there's also an opportunity for us to get the Army to bring a Black Hawk U-860 out of Mobile from the National Guard. One of our mechanics is one of the pilots, so he's working on doing that. So we're going to have static aircraft set up.
What type of public notice are you planning on giving?
We're not advertising it publicly. They are going to show up because the jets, they'll see them flying around like they did last year, and they showed up. So we're going to have a rope line to better control the people that do show up. But it is open to the public, and we're more than happy to show them around and show them what the jets are capable of and what they they'll be able to go up and touch it and have someone explain to them what they are, what they do, what they're here for.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, can you just move on and give the airport manager and Continental Motors Group report?
Yes, ma'am. We can start with the bottom of the list. We go with the generator first.
Yeah.
The standby generator is working. They had, Mr. McInerney had a company come out about a month and a half ago to look at it. They have some recommendations, and so I can get with Mr. McInerney on that, as far as replacing the battery, sampling the fuel to make sure that it's stable. But it is coming on every Wednesday between 10 and 11 in the morning, so it is working.
Good.
It's just, with a standby generator, it's just preventative maintenance. So it's a one-time deal when they come out, they replace the battery, check the fuel, replace a few components on it that have been on there for a while. And then as long as it's coming on every week and doing it self-test, then there's no reason to call a technician unless there's an alarm that goes off, because it'll do a self-test. And if there's low oil, low water, it'll automatically shut down and it'll let you know what problems that it's having.
Okay. Skylights?
Skylights, I talked to the contractor. They're just waiting on a day when it's not raining. But that is, I've already spoken with them, so they are aware of that, and they're going to come out and replace or cover up 6 skylights, the ones that are leaking.
Okay, so they'll cover 6.
Is that in the south hangar north side?
Actually, it's on the maintenance side. Actually, there's 2 on the avionics side, and then there's 4 on the mechanic side. So there's the 2 separate hangars. Because the avionics, they've already done 6.
6, I thought that was
Right.
already done. They've
Yes,
done
sir.
6 of them.
So they're going to do the ones on the maintenance side.
Okay, the repaint, refurbish of the exterior of the T-hangers.
And that, David Shear and Joe McInerney and I were going to get together and discuss that as far as
So
sharing the cost of repainting.
So that's still pending in discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Joe, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I really don't, Pam.
Okay.
Again, Josh and I tossed it around whose responsibility it is. I've got some figures as far as what I think it'll cost to do a good job of it, but I really am not prepared for this meeting to actually to make a recommendation.
Okay.
I certainly think that Continental Motors has a responsibility to help us keep those T-anchors in good repair, though.
Okay, duly noted. The repair of the weather stripping?
Yes, ma'am. That is, all of the weather stripping has been repaired along the edges of the doors. The door sweeps, as we did fix hangar 17, and so if any customers, and if they've come forward to say, can you replace them, we are doing that. So we're repairing as needed or replacing as needed.
Okay, and the replacement of the sound card and the AWAS?
Waiting on the gentleman to come back. He's supposed to be locating one from another part of the state, but he said he would bring one out.
Okay,
Because they were upgrading a system somewhere, so that system they're upgrading has the same sound card that we do, so he was going to just bring that one and replace the one that we have.
And does he have a deadline to have that done?
No, sir, he did not give me a deadline.
and the update on taxiway and runway light bulb replacements?
I spoke with Kyle Klenner yesterday, and there was one section that needed some, I think, an underground transformer, so he's waiting on a part for that. But there was 3 taxiway lights out as of yesterday, and I believe it was 2 runway lights, but those are waiting on parts.
Okay, so it is being addressed?
Yes, ma'am.
On top of.
But this is Joe.
Yes, sir.
The pet grill lights are all okay,
Yes, sir. I spoke with Kyle yesterday, and they're working.
and we've ordered bulbs and everything else.
Yes, sir, he did.
Okay, great. Do you have anything else to add to the monthly report?
We did, I think at the last meeting, or it was a few meetings ago, but all of the lights have been replaced on the T-hangers. We have dusted on lights, so those are all brand-new LED lights.
Good.
The public safety, I don't know who I need to get in touch with, but I'll find out. Their lights are staying on 24/7, so I think it's a photo cell that's gone bad. So if they could get that, I'll see if I can get a hold of whoever's in charge of that hangar and get that fixed.
Okay,
So-
anything else you'd like to add?
That's it, just the formation clinic is going to be, if the weather holds, it's going to be a lot bigger than we did last year. So, and I already have, and I don't know if we'll discuss as far as tenants for the new hangars that they're going to be building on the east side. So I've got some information about that we can discuss. As far as a company wanting to relocate to Fairhope. So,
So we can have that pursuant, you can provide the information to the company and so forth.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
So what is the sound card in the AWAS?
Oh, and the AWAS, it's for the recorded line, so when you call in, and it
Oh, the phone line?
right, yes, sir. Now, it's been hit by lightning twice. I think we replaced it a year and a half ago, and we do have a surge protector on it, but that's the issue with the sound card. When you dial the number, you don't hear anything. The AWAS is working except for that part where you call in, the phone number.
Okay,
So,
so we're going to move on to a discussion of the City of Fairhope's Ordinance 1140, which is their 2003 Noise Overlay District. About 2 years ago, July 31st of 2017, Joe McInerney wrote to Wayne Dias about this ordinance, and Joe was discussing how the ordinance addresses building standards for noise attenuation for residences that are built in the noise overlay district, and suggested that the city formulate a way to ensure knowledge that that prospective buyers were purchasing a home or lot within this noise overlay district either at the building permit submittal stage or at the sales contract stage. Mr. Dias responded that he'd refer that to Eric Cortinas for discussion. I don't know that it went any further at that time. But Joe raised it again this month, or January 18th this year, with Mr. Dias. And this was in the context of Joe having seen property, currently agricultural, on County Road 13 being marketed for sale that is within the noise overlay district. Joe was inquiring about any new land use planning tools since the noise overlay district was enacted. As you're aware, the land adjacent to the airport has always been compatible when used in an agricultural capacity. However, as everyone is also aware, we have received complaints from citizens residing in developments within this noise overlay district about the existence of the airport and airport noise. Mr. Diaz responded that the City of Fairhope would ensure the overlay zone is complied with if and when a property is developed. He then suggested that the Airport Authority perhaps analyze the purchase of development rights and the transfer of development rights as two tools that could be utilized to protect the airport from development encroachment. And then on February 1st, Eric Cortinas, in an email, added some additional context and information, stating that when the current ordinance was formulated, there was a requirement that an engineer certify that any new house must meet the noise attenuation requirements for the noise overlay district. This involves certain requirements governing insulation, windows, etc. Then when the City of Fairhope in 2012 adopted the International Energy Conservation Code, those same specifications became the base code requirements and the default standards for all new construction. So this does not apply to existing structures that predate the ordinance. The Airport Authority would like to suggest the following: that the City of Fairhope review the existing ordinance number 1140 and update it to include that notice is given to individuals purchasing existing houses and other structures within the noise overlay district, not just those developing land within the district. And two, that when the comprehensive land use plan is formulated, it take into account incompatible land usage with the airport in planning for development and address the issue of purchase or transfer of development rights. And third, that the Airport Authority, the City of Fairhope, and the Baldwin County Board of Realtors work together to educate the public about the special aspects of purchasing land, homes, and structures within the noise overlay district and ensure at the time of purchase or construction a signed acknowledgement of the ordinance is obtained. So, Jack, do you have comments about these suggestions from?
Well, I think it's a good suggestion, and I would, we'll ask Mr. Dias to speak to it maybe, but I think that it's a good idea. We've had issues with, other than just the noise overlay district, there's oftentimes that we have citizens, homeowners complain that they didn't know they had to comply with this or that, and we've, stated we should maybe get a signed piece of paper from these people stating that they are aware of that when they're purchasing in a situation such as this. So, I would welcome the planning department to draft our revision to the ordinance to, give us some assurances. And I think from a legal standpoint, we could, fall back on it and say, yeah, we have in writing, you recognize the fact that you're in a noise overlay district and you will comply with the construction standards in that noise overlay district. So, from my point of view, that I'm in favor of that. If Wayne thinks that we can accomplish that fairly simply and quickly, I don't really don't know of any reasons why the council wouldn't adopt something like that. I can't speak for them, but I can certainly say that it seems like a really good suggestion to me, and we should get on it. And whether you have one or two, there was a mention of at from the developer, and then maybe at closing, or maybe you do it twice, It's not unheard of to do things twice, and then you can say, you were afforded the opportunity two times.
Could you give us your insight and input?
Sure, definitely. This is a difficult situation because you have a growing county, a growing city, and you also have a growing airport. So those are two combinations that kind of coincide. That sometimes makes it very difficult. Joe's right. I will tell you, we had a meeting with a developer, just a preliminary meeting, talking about a potential development near the airport. We made them very much aware that this isn't the overlay zone for the airport, and there is noise and air traffic and so forth. And the developer knew that, and we went a little further. I think he became more concerned as we spoke about this because of complaints and things like that. So I think that will kind of take care of itself. But it's difficult to retrofit homes because that's very costly, and I don't think that's probably a viable option to help with the noise attenuation. But as we had a discussion with Eric, and Eric was telling me the measures they go through to ensure, as best you can mitigate the noise. It won't solve all the problems, but it will help with that. I think the biggest thing you could do is look at maybe, mention purchase of development rights. That's basically where you have someone who's farming, for example, and you purchase they keep the property and allow it to farm, but you purchase any kind of rights they have to develop it. So the farmer is able to keep farming, but also we have the knowledge that it won't be developed in any certain way, and that's typically done throughout the country. It's fairly new, I think, probably in Alabama, and so it's just a way to try to keep the property in active agriculture while not allowing any homes to be built there for a period of time. I will tell you, we faced a similar problem when I was in Walton County because half of Walton's in Eglin Air Base there, and we had some standards as well. I would go back and look at those as well, see if I can glean some information from those. Those seem to work pretty well because you had a lot of air traffic, and also you had a bombing range nearby, so that was interesting. But I will be glad to look at that, Councilman, and see if we can kind of bring to the table to maybe help alleviate that. As far as notification of people purchasing property, I don't know if by ordinance we could make them do that. I defer to legal counsel. If we can, it's great. We found that the Board of Realtors has been good to work with as far as notifying people. I think they have some responsibility as well. If a realtor sells some property and doesn't tell you of a situation that's well known, I think they're in some problems as well. But we'll be glad to work with them as well and try to convey that information to them.
I think by law, a realtor does not have to disclose that airport's nearby unless you ask.
Really? Okay.
And other states or counties or districts, I don't know where, have the law that they have to disclose, they have to tell you that, but that hasn't been adopted in Baltimore.
There's one thing that in a flood zone, a lot of times because of the community rating system, you have to notify people they're in a flood zone. Maybe wise for us to identify this area and just send them a letter saying, please be aware you're in the airport overlay zone, and here's what you may expect, just so they're aware of that. That might be something we could do that would be fairly cheap, inexpensive, just get a mailing list basically and send to them.
Oh, I think for me it seems like it's going to be new people to the area. The people that move in there, they're going to be the ones that complain. And we know they drove by the airport and they see the airport and they just expect aircraft flying in the area, but we all know
it was hazy today. They drove by.
Yeah, they still they'll pretend they didn't see it. But anyway, yeah, and I have a little bit of hesitation over who would go out and buy those the rights to subdivide or something. Is it the airport authority? Well, no, they don't have the money. And is it the city? Are we going to do that? I mean, the federal government can print as much money as they want and go buy up rights around an Air Force base, but I mean, how much is that done? By small.
Right. And maybe looking for maybe grant opportunities for that. Maybe also we could, I think we could require a note to be placed on the plat, and that would be another measure to try to ensure people know about that. However, a lot of times people buy a lot, they don't look at the plat. But we can look for different ways of notifying people to make sure that they're aware of it, because I do agree people have a tendency to move in and then they want to complain later. We've had several problems through the years when I was with the county with some of the outlying airfields for the Navy, and those Navy bases were there since the late 40s and middle 40s, and we always got complaints, but they were there long ago, and that's so they were kind of there first, I guess you would say.
Would this be something we'd want to put on our website to show where the overlay district is?
Is it already on the city zoning map?
It is. If you go to the city's map viewer, it's on there as well, but I think it'd be wise to put it on there, a static map
We do
maybe,
have
yeah.
the ordinance on the
Yeah.
website, so,
Right.
but yeah, we'll get with,
Tag
have
them.
our IT person get with the city's IT person.
And
about
we'd be
that.
glad to produce a map, it just be a static map or interactive map, however y'all want to do it, and I'm sure we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think going as many lengths as you can to notify people. That's a cheap way to do it, also. But I think that will help. Will go a long ways.
I think by and large, they would be on constructive, a potential purchaser, that is, would be on constructive notice of anything that's published in the city zoning ordinance or on the zoning map,
Correct.
whether they choose to look at it or not.
So is the city willing to revisit the ordinance to perhaps update it since we're 15, 16 years later?
I think that we'd have to make a formal request to the city to
Yeah.
look into it.
But at least entertain the
Yeah.
idea.
I think it should come in the form of a request, and whether we could vote on it, we could have a resolution to request it, or we could have a resolution to ask the chairman to ask the city to look into it.
And what we could do is we could do some research, bring back to this committee the research we found, and kind of get the feelings on how to move forward with that, and then we could go back and draft it and make sure it's meeting the objectives you all have for it.
Okay, so we'll have a person here determined to work with you and
Great.
go forward. Thank
Or
you
we
very
could
much.
just
All right.
just ask Joe. Joe, did you get all this?
I did.
Okay.
And wouldn't it, in light of kind of some of and I know that Josh is going to be able to speak to this more pointedly than I am, but, if there are certain restrictions put in certain corridors around an airport as we look at the expanding growth around this area, some of these areas could be viewed as green belt opportunities also, to where you actually you don't put the zoning on there that's going to let any density occur within those there are FAA corridors off the end of the runway that relate to height a lot of times, but it would also be interesting to overlay that onto what we might see in the future that would be on the approach and departure ends of we have one runway, so it's, if you're on the north or south, it might be something to look at from a city's perspective, is kind of a restrictive
That was one
layout.
of our suggestions, since the city is going forward with the comprehensive land planning and roll all that in, those types of things into that.
We may need to approach the county commission too, because
Okay.
the airport,
kind of goes out of the PJ and
Yeah.
one,
Yeah,
on one end it's on the
exactly.
PJ and one end it's
Yeah.
not.
because zoning can only extend to the corporate limits. So and the airport is kind of somewhat separated from the actual corporate limits, even though it's in the corporate limits of the city. But to the extent we're talking about an overlay, we may need to approach the county commission, because there's going to be property around the airport within that vicinity that the city may not have any legislative authority to establish zoning in certain parts of it.
And to that end, that area around the airport is in the county, obviously, as you said, but there is no zoning around there. The zoning in the county works kind of a strange way. You have to petition, the property owner has to petition to become zoned, so it's a weird process, but that's certainly something worth looking at, because I do agree with Mr. Hicks that basically if you could do some low-density, large lot zoning, that always is a good mitigation measure. That's used a lot in flood zones, so you don't put people in harm's way for flooding, and I think the same principle applies here in the airport overlay. You don't want to put people in a place that's going to be noisy and so forth. So I think that's an excellent idea. Obviously, when we look at the comprehensive land use map, we would do that. However, that would be only effective if it was zoned inside the city, and because it's unzoned, that brings up a difficulty. But I think that's wise to go and reach out and to the county and see if there's something that can be done.
Okay. Josh, could you reach out to the county to see if there's something that can be done there? And this is a good discussion, a lot of good ideas. Okay, so we'll go forward with the ideas and suggestions and report back in a month or so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the treasurer's report. Amy?
This will be quick because meeting a week early, I don't have our numbers yet, so I'll have them this week, and I will send out by email the normal report. That's okay for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other business that anyone wishes to bring up?
This is Joe. Why don't you talk briefly about our meeting a week ago, Monday?
Yeah, we had a meeting with some education officials out at the academy on the airport about doubling the size of the airport academy. I wouldn't categorize their response as jubilant, but they are considering it, and I think there's a need. They had a plat, a suggested plat that I should have brought with me, but didn't. But the academy has, I think, Joe, what, 135 students now?
Yes, sir.
And we're
all but out of room.
And we're working towards getting the A&P certification there without having to go anywhere else. So I think it's needed. The money is the problem at this point.
For the
For the expansion.
For the expansion, for both the K through 12 and the junior college.
Right. And State Board had a couple of people on it. Joe, am I leaving out anything?
No, pretty much. I mean, the participants were Coastal Alabama Community College, Baldwin County Board of Education, and Lee Lawson and ourselves. And, you know, I think we agreed to meet again in May. And, you know, and I think everybody saw the importance of expanding it. I just don't think no one could have readily identify monies that we could, it would cost about $2.5 million to expand it. No one saw that money readily available. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. The need is there, the money's the problem.
So
Yeah.
that, you know, there's a, I mean, it's servicing some very well-known industries and corporate citizens on both sides of the bay. I mean, is it something that those people might want to be afforded the opportunity to look at making a direct contribution?
Yes. I
Yeah,
mean,
it'd be
I
fair.
think I mean, you know, I think back 10 years ago when Charlie Bassett decided this needed to be done. We didn't have, UTC was about half the size. There was no Airbus. And Continental was just thinking about coming to Fairhope. I think we've got a lot better story to tell now, and you know, I think we just need to put our, you know, just be consistent and march forward with it. I think we can find the funding for it.
I think so. I mean, with the second assembly line underway over at Airbus, and you have BT Aerospace over there, and then you have the big infrastructure project that Continental's engaged in. I mean, part of all this infrastructure growth is predicated kind of on having the workforce to support it. So everyone's right. And I think that, you know, they're spending a lot of money on these facilities, and we need to make sure that the people of this area are able to take advantage of these new jobs.
Is A&P certification possible without expanding, or
I
not?
don't think so. Probably not. Maybe improbable.
Because the only place we have is at Brookley Field.
Yeah.
We have a building almost identical to ours at BC Rain. It's doing the same thing we're doing over on Dolphin Island Parkway. And then A&P School, the only one, you can get all the classes here, but you have to finish at Brooklyn Field.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
So
some
we need
talk
more.
about consolidating some of those programs at the Fairhope Airport.
Which programs?
Some of the other aviation academies.
We have a lot of high school students getting out at noon and going to our
Yeah, they
aviation
are.
academy and spending 2 or 3 hours, but they have to finish in Mobile to get their certification.
It's a great
So-
opportunity.
It is.
Yeah.
I think we should press forward with it. And you say the next meeting is all the way in May?
Joe,
Yes, it's in like the third Monday in May, and I'll send somebody to save a day when we get that far.
this was, as I saw it, just a very, very preliminary meeting. We We need to talk a little bit more about how the cost is going to be shared, the ongoing expense is going to be shared, cost of building, I mean, and all the other partners that might be available to us.
So those people participating in the meeting, did you walk away with specific assignments to be completed before May?
No.
No.
It was a bit of a unorganized exploratory exercise.
Okay. All right, does anyone have anything else to bring before the authority at this meeting?
One item that I've just noticed recently over there, if I can, at the airport is behind Continental Motors, there's an area that's being utilized as a parking area now, right behind their two main shop hangars, which would be behind the FBO.
Yes.
And there's a lot of erosion and mud that's being pulled out into that drive there, and I think we just need to come up with some sort of a plan to mitigate that, because that seems to be where a lot of the people that are working at Continental are parking, because the gravel parking lots are now filled with transient, customers of the FBO. But what you'll see down there, particularly after rain, is you're starting to see a lot of mud sloughing across that driveway, which, there's not a protocol to really clean it or sweep it or anything like that. So it's just something I've noticed getting worse over the past year. So.
Ray, if I could address that, are you talking directly behind the avionics?
Come on up to so everyone
We,
can hear.
I talked to,
Fuel farm?
Yeah, just to the south of the fuel farm.
Not
all right, what we did, starting last Monday, is we no longer park there.
Okay.
Because of that issue, with it becoming a muddy field and all that. So now, all the employees will either park in the extended parking or along the fence line.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put up a rope line.
Okay.
So we don't have any vehicles driving in there, but Continental employees no longer park there for that reason, so. We are working on, adding 2 additional parking spots along the fence line, and then moving the rental cars over to the grass lot, so we have more parking there. So
Okay.
we have to take care of that, because that was one of the things I noticed was all that mud,
Yeah,
and it's getting worse and worse, so.
that was it. And I just thought it was kind of getting to the point like it was
Right.
going to become an issue. So.
So, and we're gonna have some dirt brought in to fill in an old septic tank by the north hangar. So I'll get some of that dirt so we can level out those holes that are there now.
Yeah, we might just throw, not necessarily hydroseeded or anything, but it might be good to put some grass back out there to stabilize it a little bit also, so.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's it, thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Anyone else have anything? No? Well, that being said, I declare make a motion to close the meeting of the Airport Authority at approximately 3:23 p.m. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, that's really